Welcome to Better Equipped with this healthy conversation. I am so excited today to introduce to you my good friend and brother, Darin Smith. Darin Smith, welcome to Better Equipped.
Hey, Cody. Thanks for having me on, man. Appreciate it. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. I'm so glad to have you on here. And today we're going to be talking about what does it mean to be an intentional father? What does that mean? And just a little background on this. A little bit of background. Darin gifted me this book a few months ago. It was probably 2 months ago? I haven't done the math.
Yeah,
and
so.
I had heard about it, and I'd heard you talk about it, Darin, but I had not got a chance to read it. And so thank you again for gifting that to me. And I know how much it meant to you, and I'm excited for us to unpack it. This is not a book report. So for those of you listening who are saying, I've never heard of it, I don't know anything about it, I haven't read it, this is not something that, you had to read the book for this to make sense. There's going to be things that Darin and I just contextually are going to pull from just because it's shaped us. But if you're interested in the book, I get no royalties, proceeds. It just you can check that out in the comment in the details below. Get a link to that, and so it's by Jon Tyson, and he's Australian. So I feel like every time I read something, I listen to the audio as well because I love that, and he reads it himself, so it's all in this Australian accent. He lives in New York City now. It's kind of crazy. So his voice is in my head that way. So Darin, as we jump into this conversation, I want to start with you as pro dad extraordinaire. How many kids you got? What gender are they? What are they? Just give it, because we're talking about that. Give us context. Yeah. And kind of who you are. You can just describe that however you want. No trick question there.
Sure. I've got two boys. So my oldest son, Harrison, is 11, and my youngest son, Hudson, is 9. And so, my wife, Carrie, and I, we've been married for almost 18 years now.
Woo!
And
nice.
Yeah, I know. And we've spent a good 6 years or so getting to know each other. We met online, and so we dived into really pouring into each other, getting to know each other before we decided to embark on this journey of becoming parents. And so it was one of those things where it's okay, there's no, I'm not getting any younger here. We've got to decide right. to make that journey and step into parenthood.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. And love your family, and love the way that you are seeking to be an intentional father to your sons. And for me, just again, mainly because of this conversation, less of an introduction, but I've got 4 kids, 3 daughters, so twin 10-year-olds, daughters, a 6-year-old daughter, and a 4-year-old son. So, I know this book primarily said, it's a practical guide to raising sons of courage and character. Yeah. But he does definitely say, hey, a lot of these principles apply even if you have daughters. So I'll be able to speak into that. So for us to be intentional fathers as kids, by the way, when this will post, it will be right before Father's Day. So whenever you listen to this, if fathers out there, happy Father's Day. I know you might listen to this 4 years down the road, and it's November, and it won't make any sense to say happy Father's Day. But that's a little bit of the timing on this. I want to start with this question, Darin.
Okay.
As we just think about this intentional fatherhood, what are the stakes? What are the stakes at hand? Why, if somebody's listening, why does this matter? What are the consequences? What are the that's the negative side, and what are the blessings and benefits to actually taking this seriously and being an intentional father?
Yeah. Well, Jon Tyson would say that, becoming a man doesn't happen by accident, right? And particularly for boys, I'll focus on boys since that's what I have. And, as I read through this book, that was, the contextual application for me is thinking about my boys. And again, becoming a man doesn't happen by accident. Men are formed, right? Our goal as fathers is to help our sons discover who God has made them and called them to be. It's been said that, hope is not a strategy, right? It's not the hope that our sons or daughters will become good men or women.
Yeah.
We need them to be good at being men or women, and that happens through planning, intentional planning. Developing a plan includes practical steps and how to raise our sons and daughters of consequence, right?
Yeah.
And so, again, if you don't be intentional about this and think about forming a plan, the world will be happy to provide their version of how to raise your children with the world's priorities and so forth. So it starts there, I think.
Dude, that's so important. And I could not agree more. Like, who do you want raising your children? The world or you, whether you're, a dad, a mother, single, married. I mean, either way, if you got kids, like this is an assignment by the Lord. I want to read something that a very famous verse from Proverbs chapter 22, verse 6. It says, train up a child in the way they should go, and when they are old, they will not depart from it. Okay, so this is something that you're going to have moments that it seems like your kids just aren't getting it. And it's easy to give up. It's easy to, or just not even give up. You don't even think of it as giving up, like, oh, I give up. But you just let the current take you. You stop fighting. You stop fighting to go upstream against the grain, against the current of the world. And you just say, what am I, I'm tired. What am I going to do? And there really is something that your training is not in vain. Even if there's moments or seasons of your child's life where it seems like they just didn't get the message, primarily or especially pertaining to faith, but even other things. But if you really are intentionally training up your child to know the Lord, they will not depart from it. And I know there's parents listening who say, well, why'd my kid depart from it? First of all, their story's not over. Second of all, there's a lot. They've got their own choices. They get to make their own decisions. And we're not perfect parents either. So there's both things at play. But that's all the more reason that we must take this seriously. All the more reason that even with being an intentional father, there's not a guarantee. Darin, I want to read you a quote real quick that I thought was very, very interesting in this. And let's see if I can find it. Basically gives this analogy of if you're driving down the highway and one of your tires goes flat. Okay, you're in a car, so there's 4 tires. One of your tires goes flat. What you don't do is get out of your car, pull out a knife or a gun, slash your tires, and just call it a day and say, well, because one went flat, might as well give up. He says, no. He says, no, you just because it's not perfect, just because something gets off the rails, just because you didn't do it right, just because they're not responding the way you want, doesn't mean you sabotage the other things that you can do or that you should do or that you can sure up and fix. You repair the tire. You figure out how to fix it and get it back on the road. And I thought that was an important encouragement at the end of this book in the sense of I think sometimes people give up before they start because they can't do it 100%.
Absolutely.
Because they can't do it perfectly. Yeah. Talk into that temptation.
No, I mean, I think anything you do to be intentional, like this, the goal is not to like have this written out prescriptive, like, list of check boxes that you have to do everything right and include the whole list. It's about your heart posture and your desire to, like you said, keep moving forward. One of the things for me, my oldest son, is a special needs child, and you've known Harrison and gotten to know him and love him, and there's some statistics alarming about fathers who leave families with children who have special needs. And we can unpack this later in through the course of our conversation, but I wanted to not only not be part of a statistic that says I'm not going to be there for my special needs child, but I want to lean into that and actually pour in more. And you and I both have friends in our social networks where, we would say like, as Jon Tyson talks about the involved father, that's sort of like your B. If you're like A, B, C, D, F, this would be like your B graded father, right? Pretty good, right?
Yeah.
But we don't want to just be pretty good, right? We want to be an A, type of father. We want to be deeply invested in our children. So we're going to lean into and be more intentional with, like you said, this journey with our children. And so that's kind of where, I'm focused at, but it doesn't mean we're going to be perfect or that we have to be, meet this sort of checklist to say that we were successful or not. Right.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the things, for you and I, for people listening, this is pretty much 100%, is most of us were raised by B, C, D, or F dads.
Yeah.
And so the natural question would be, well, okay, is it possible to be an A? But the honest truth is, I think it's possible to be an A, not 100%, according to kind of the way Jon Tyson might break that down. But I think that we've got to come to grips with there are things about our fathers, even if they were an F, meaning they weren't even in the picture, you didn't know them, but even with that, there's still things like we learn from our parents, in this case, our fathers. We learn what to do and what not to do, who we want to be and who we do not want to be. I think for all of us, there's things that we come into this with a bit of a deficit, all of us. And I want, for people listening, I want them to think and understand, we acknowledge to you that you're coming in with a deficit. I came into, being a husband and father with a deficit, but A, being human, and B, none of us have a perfect father. So neither was mine. So I know for you, Darin, and you can make this as personalized as you want, but how did kind of what to do and what not to do shape you as you both started your journey as a father, and also kind of way you think now of, man, I want to be for I want to raise the bar, I don't want to settle for less. I don't want to be just like what I want to build on my father's legacy and really grow the quality of that.
Well, I'll start with saying, for me, it started with a personal examination of myself. And, there's this idea of you've got to get yourself right and fix some things with yourself before you, look to trying to be the example for your child. One quote I did want to share with you is Charles Kettering, who said, "Every father should remember one day his son will follow his example, not his advice." And so, my own.
I totally heard you. I caught all that. Read that one more time, because I think it's so, so important. Say it one more time.
Every father should remember one day his son will follow his example, not his advice.
Take that in.
Sobering, right? So I got to look at my own self, right? I got to examine myself. I've got to look at some things that, maybe I'm not doing right in my life, either as a husband, as a Christian man. And so for me, it starts there and saying, what are some of the things that I need to get right? What are some things I need to fix in my own personal life that because a child's going to sniff that out. They're going to see that. They're going to see that example. And so, you and I, outside of just this fatherhood discussion, I've looked to you as a not just a friend, but a mentor, as a counselor, to talk through some things that I needed to get right in my life and change and to be a better man myself. And so, starting there and being intentional about fixing and putting a plan together to right the ship in some areas of my own life before embarking on this, journeyhood of being a father.
Yeah. And that actually leads me kind of to I appreciate your kind words there, man. I've been blessed by you and encouraged and transformed by you. And so this next question I was thinking is, I've witnessed your commitment over the last, and I just and you and I's kind of personal relationship in the last 10 years, I've witnessed your personal commitment to your discipleship journey, to your journey as growing personally as a disciple of Jesus. And that's really, really important because I think anyone should acknowledge, I know Jon Tyson definitely points it out multiple times, there is an epidemic of the lack of people who can honestly say, yeah, I've been engaged and been a part of intentional discipling relationships. And for the purpose of transformation at a personal level. And so this bleeds into how it's hard to disciple your children if you haven't been discipled yourself. And so I want you to, what are your thoughts on just when we really think about intentional fatherhood, really, is that synonymous, at least foundationally, for what God already calls us to like, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and raise up your children, and talk about the Lord and teach them, as you walk and as you sit and as you lie down and as you eat and as you sleep. Like, it's like one of these Deuteronomy 6 things that we're just called to like embody, and everything that's our top mission. What's that connection between intentional fatherhood and really the call that Jesus already gave us to make disciples of our children?
Yeah, I think there's an element of submission there, being submission to God, and willingness to just say, like, God, I put my life in your hands. I want to listen with true ears to hear, and ask you to guide my life, to instruct me in your ways, and to be in discipleship with God. Is definitely the place to start.
I agree. You think about when I think about what we call discipleship, meaning we're called to be disciples, and I think discipleship is really our language of saying, how do you grow as a follower of Jesus? How do you grow as a lifelong learner and student of Jesus, and to look more like Jesus? And so I want people to think about, especially the fathers listening, not excluding anyone else, but how serious are you about your personal growth as a disciple of Jesus?
Yeah.
Because ultimately that is what the example you're trying to set. I think about Jon Tyson. Jon Tyson and his son got up every morning, I think starting around 13 or so, every morning, started meeting together at 5:45 a.m. every morning. I'm still grappling with wow, I'm up that early, but do I ask my kids to get up that early and meet with me from 5:45? It's not like he's saying that that's the only way to do it. Yeah. But the intentionality of his son got to watch him be in the Word, commit to that, asking questions, confessing sins, confessing struggles, inviting him into prayer. There's these things that were, I believe, became very normalized to his son because he was transparent about his own discipleship journey, his own journey as a disciple. Yeah. And I think, man, it's like, we've got to own this. We've got to own this as the primary objective for being an intentional father is being intentional with our journey with Jesus.
How can your children, if you're telling your children to do this and you're not doing it yourself, it's that whole, talking the talk, walking the walk, right? So you're right. Like, how can you expect or ask your children to do that if you're not doing that yourself? And so that is something I've, in my own personal life, I've been heavily involved over the past 6 months in a discipleship type of journey with other men to, build that pathway of iron sharpening iron, to, be in the Word daily, reading, in communication with God, to, be able to build and encourage each other up as men, as fathers in some instances, to really, have accountability, and to, establish those patterns and practices now, so that, as you said, as my children, my boys become closer to that age where, I hope to to introduce some of these practices, it'll already be sort of like a muscle that's been exercised, right?
Right. They have context by watching your life. They've already got context to say, oh yeah, I've seen Dad do that. I think about my kids, like it is totally normal and expected, not in like a expected way on them necessarily, like, but they totally understand like that mom and dad are involved in discipling relationships throughout their week, every week.
Yeah.
And that there's time that we carve out that we're not specifically with our children to help be developed and develop others, to encourage and be encouraged and pray for and be prayed for and all these things that we need. And they, the twins are 10 and they're like, I want to start our own D group, a discipleship group. Like, how do we start one? Is it both of the twins together? Is it each of them multiplying out? It's like they themselves are thinking, I want to be a part of that. I want to do that for others. I want to be a part of that for myself. And, but it's because they see it modeled in a way that is consistent and valued. And, so Jon Tyson, one of the things I know you and I've read the book, but for those who either have or may end up reading the book, one of the things that I think is glaringly unique is how over the top, and I mean that in like a cool way. I mean, the things that Jon does with his son, like taking him on like crazy hikes and month-long trips to this and like we're going to watch this movie and we're going to go to barbecue and we're going to do this. And we're going to have this like special ceremony on top of a New York City building. And like, like they live in New York City. So it's extravagant. And he talks about this, like he recognizes this uniqueness. So all that to say, and I'm going to go a few places with this.
Okay.
And this is a question, Darin, do many parents already do extravagant things for their kids? And I'm only going to pick on a few things, but, and I'm not against these things. I don't want you to think I'm against them, but they're extravagant towards their education, their sports or extracurriculars, and their vacations.
Yeah. 100%.
I mean, 100%. So people are already trying to live this extravagance, but, and again, I'm not against vacation, sports, schooling, education. I'm not against like those inherently, but I feel like a lot of those are really the heart of extravagance without the intentional discipleship being put into it. Did you notice that at all when you read the book? Just sort of that thought process of the comparison of like, man, people think that's crazy, but then at the same time you look at what they do and it's like, man, you're already doing crazy things. Without
a doubt. I mean, in particular, our communities in which we live in and stuff, we see this all the time, extravagance and whatnot. But, the beauty of what Jon's saying is that it doesn't have to necessarily equate to being expensive, right? Like do what you can do within your own, current, abilities, right? Whether time or money, but, it's about being, thoughtful and intentional behind what you do and everything that you do there. But you're right. There's no shortage of examples around us of people that, are doing extravagant things. And so I would say, certainly it's very, very capable, doable for all of us to, do something along those lines.
Well, and there's someone like me, and I don't know who's listening, and it's all kind of relative, but like I'm not a man of great wealth at all, and this has been a challenging thing for me with as a husband, as a father, to go, where do you kind of splurge, even though mathematically that's not the reasonable thing. And Jon says something, and this is one of the quotes I wanted to read as well. 20 years later, and I'm just punching in here at page 160. Okay. 20 years later, which moment do you think your son will remember? Okay, he talks about all these experiences your kid might have. It says, well, Jon, that's not possible. Talking about all these crazy, amazing, intentional fatherhood trips and things that they did.
Yeah.
Jon, that's not possible. We can't afford that. It's not practical. Beware the soul-sucking voice of reasonableness. Your children will leave your house, and these moments are going to happen. You have the power to shape them. Be intentional, not reasonable. You get one shot.
Yeah. I mean,
isn't that crazy? Like, I'm like, oh man, like he said that, and I was like, how quickly kids grow up. What are you gonna say, Darin?
This is a bit of a pivot, but he talks in the book too about another book that I've read, and I encourage you and or your listeners to look into this. It's called, I think it's called The Moments That Matter, or The Power of Moments That Matter. I might be butchering the title. We can link that as well after the conversation. But really, don't miss these opportunities. Sometimes you have one shot, in your life to get these things right. So don't miss them, whether it's, the first breakup of your child, exposure to drugs and alcohol, pornography, LGBTQ issues, racism, death, first job, driving, baptism, bullying, on and on and on. There are these moments that matter. And, again, sort of along the same lines of being intentional about planning in advance of these moments so that you can be proactive instead of reactive and make them special and memorable. So as you said, as they reflect back at some point, they're going to remember some of these specific moments in their life that were, just incredible experiences for them, right?
Yeah. It's so one short story from me on this is last year my twins turned 10, and we had always, Micah and I had always thought intentionally we'd love to sort of mark that point in their life, and sort of set a tone for them and really bless them and pour into them in a very unique way. Again, we've got two other younger children, and say like, this isn't actually a full family trip. This is something for us to celebrate and pour into you. And through some generosity of some people, like we got some free tickets to the Ark Encounter and to the Creation Museum, which was super helpful and amazing. And they even threw in like 2 nights at a hotel. It was crazy. Like we stuff that wasn't within reach financially for us. There was a family that really wanted to like make that happen. And it was super special. Anyways, we poured into them, and even 9 months later, there was a pivot point that I saw in my children's life. And I know that sounds a little over dramatic, but for me, there were some things that we were able to speak into them. They got our undivided attention for a few days out of context. We weren't doing chores. We weren't taking care of their siblings. And again, they did share it as twins. They did share the trip. So that was unique, but they're slightly used to that. But there was this moment of, I'm stepping into, because what the next chapter coming is teen years. They're not there yet. JL calls it, she's a pre-tween. And so she's like, she's not even a tween yet. She's a pre-tween. And I was like, that makes sense. Yeah. But it's quickly coming. I thought to myself, 10 years, how fast the first 10 years have gone. 10 years from now, they're going to be almost 21. Yeah. 10 years from now, they'll be almost 21. High school will be a distant memory. They're going to be, whether it's college or whatever, they're going to be well in, they're not even beginning their adult years, at least right at the beginning. And that's just the next 10, which I believe is going to be even faster. And I think about the time that they'll really be in the home, kind of they'll always be my child, but kind of as the child and not an adult. It's so critically important that we understand we do get one shot. You can't go back. And I think even parents listening out there who are further along in this journey, maybe their kids are out of the house, I think they really, really palpably get this. Is, no, you don't understand. Like, I think what the advice that they would give their younger self is it's never in vain. It's never a squandering waste of your time, energy, resources to pour intentionally into your kids. and again, whether that's just the way you model your own discipleship journey, whether it's the way you bring them along on their discipleship journey and train them up, whether it's the way you pour into them and these experiences, helping connect them with other people outside of their parents. We're going to talk about that next, Darin.
Yes.
Because I've heard you talk about this even within the last 6 months.
Yeah.
And I remember when you gave us men this book. Yeah. I remember one of the things you said was, and he uses the word cohort in the book. Getting these people that are ahead of you in time, people are on the journey along with you. Yeah. What's the importance of even a part of your discipleship journey? Maybe it's not even like your discipleship group or whatever, but like maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But like, what's the importance of not actually trying to do this intentional father thing intentionally alone? Like, meaning, yeah, I'm doing it, but cool, nobody else is doing this. What's the importance of actually trying to invite other people into the journey and kind of as fathers together? Yeah,
I think there's an admission, right, that I don't know everything. I don't know a lot, right? Yeah. So sometimes I consider myself a jack of all trades, master of none. Yeah. Or it's like I know a little bit about a lot of things, but like I want to leave some things up to the experts, right? So like whether it's, financial kind of savviness, right? So I'll put a plug in here for my good friend, Chris Lightfoot, that's somebody I might want to invite into, a relationship with my sons to teach them about, some financial literacy, right. How about setting up 401k and Roth IRAs and how to, invest your money wisely and also be generous, right? Mm-hmm. Chris has a real heart for generosity as well. Yeah. And so these are lessons from a financial discipline standpoint that I want to bring somebody else in who has more life experience, more knowledge, who can pour into my children. I'm not just saying this because I'm talking to you right now, but you, Cody, is somebody I have had involved in my children's life, and I want to continue to be intentional about having you as a part of my son's life, just from a spiritual, guidance standpoint, as you've been, the pastor of my family for so many years. And, I look up to you personally at a spiritual level, and I know my boys do as well. And certainly you're somebody I want my boys to, continue to have the opportunity to walk with and have you pour into my boys from a spiritual context.
I'll have Hudson in my cabin here soon.
I know he's looking forward to it. He really is.
I'm really excited about that, and just love your boys.
So again, just to kind of wrap that up in a succinct way, it's looking for resources and people who have gifts and disciplines in other areas that maybe I'm not as strong in. That can also help. And this probably resonates with you. Sometimes your kids don't want to hear from you, right? Right. Like you may be an expert in a particular discipline or field, but sometimes it's like they just, if it's dad or mom telling them something, it doesn't resonate. But somebody else tells them, and they're like, "Did you know that this is a thing?" And you're like, "Yeah, I've told you that," but it just goes in one ear, not the other sometimes, right?
It's so true. It's so true. Yeah, no, I think you're right. There's such a value in the body of Christ collectively. Kind of takes a village to raise a child, but I think even more intentionally saying there's collective wisdom that is greater than my wisdom. Yeah, and I think, and I hear you saying that is like whether it's on a financial standpoint or even athletic standpoint or a schooling standpoint or it could be so many things that depending on their interest and what you, I think part of our job is to, even if our kids don't, at different stages give us the kind of the satisfaction of showing their respect in certain ways and listening. I think our job almost as a coach, as they get older, is to identify their strengths, their interests, their weakness, even maybe greater than they have self-awareness of, and say, man, they would really love, like, I'll tell you a story. My daughter, JL, who is one of the more independent children, strong-willed. She's grown a lot in a good way. But she's heading into she's like speeding towards the teen teen years in terms of like where she's at developmentally, internally, externally, and she's thinking different, acting different. Not all bad ways, just we can tell. Like she's not a toddler, she's not a kid, she's somewhere in between there. And one of Micah's coworkers at LifeWise, her name's Angie. She got to interact with her, and she lit up in a whole different way. There was someone that was outside of her parents that I went to Mike and I was like, whoa, like JL, like it would be really wise if we had like Angie take like JL out for like coffee sometime, which by the way, coffee would be like a big deal as a 10-year-old.
Well, yeah.
That alone. And then with Angie, someone outside of the parents who could pour into, because JL came up to me and was like, man, I really like Angie. And for JL, it's not like she comes up and says, I don't like so-and-so, I don't like, but it's not very often she comes and says, man, I really like that's just, it was something that I could tell it hit her. And as a parent, it's like, all right, how do we get more FaceTime for JL with Angie? And so that's just one example, but there's things that we have to kind of acknowledge and kind of fan into flame in our children through the people of God that we see, hey, they're really responsive to them. And then the other side is the people we invite in. I mean, think about how honoring, or, to be like, man, I'm so honored that you would think of me in that way towards your children. Like you're not bothering people to invite them to play that kind of role in your child's life, whether it's a one-off type of situation or something ongoing, and say like, we really value you. And I think our child would, and we know that they would really, this would be a part of their journey as a disciple of Jesus by being a part of you and growing into a man or woman of God that he calls to be. Like that's, I think, don't be afraid to invite people into that. And again, even if it's like, I've got some time, or only got a little bit of time, or, can we do it in 3 months? Like that's, don't shoot the other tires out just because one isn't running perfectly. Like work with what you got, work with what the Lord has given you. And, but man, it's so important, no matter who you are, to have the people of God in real relational ways in your life. But again, like you're saying, Darin, like that might be in really specific areas at really specific times developmentally that they need. I mean, I think about things, and again, no knock against my parents, but there's things that I wish I would have learned before I left home. Like there's things I wish I would have had more explicit conversations, whether with my parents or my parents helping me have conversations with other people on certain topics. I remember my sister, like the day before I left for college, teaching me how to do laundry. I used to fold laundry, but I never did laundry. And like, it was a foreign concept to me. Like so it can be little things like that. It can be much bigger things too.
There are like practical things like, changing how to change a tire, right? Or used to be when I was young, this is going to date me in my age, but like how to balance a checkbook, right? Like nobody balances a checkbook anymore, right? We have these credit cards. It's like free Monopoly money. I don't know, but it's like, but that was a thing, when I was, like younger and getting ready to go off to college, was like, do you know how to balance your checkbook? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as we head towards the close here, I want to ask one more question.
Sure.
There's so much more that we could talk about, but
there's a lot. We almost could do a part 2.
Well, let's do this. Let's do this. What I'll ask that other question at the end. What, as you've been thinking and praying and preparing for this conversation, what are some things that you people listening, what do you want to share? What's on your heart, man?
There's some other areas that I really
please just bring them up. Yeah.
Yeah. So, self-discovery, you kind of, I think, touched on this a little bit, but, being very intentional as your children are getting into that, high school type of age, and, working with them on personality and skills tests. Like this would have been so huge for me. I'm thinking back on my own childhood to understand who I am. What do I really like and what do I dislike? Where are my strengths? Where are my weaknesses? Yeah. I know it's kind of all the rage, but the Enneagram test, man, that is spot on. That is exactly who I am. And now it makes so much sense about who I am. and how, my interpersonal relationships with other people based on, where they are on the Enneagram, it all just sort of clicks, and it like light bulbs come on, right? Strength Finder, spiritual gift assessments, Myers-Briggs, Berkman personality test.
Yeah.
And then, a really important item that's not really a test per se is being able to connect your faith with vocation. So, as you prepare to enter, whether it's, let's just say it's, for me, it was the corporate world.
Right.
How can I be intentional about my faith in the corporate world? So being able to connect your faith with your vocation as well. That's one area I think about. We talked a little bit about this, about inviting people into your children's lives. I think both young and old, and Jon talks about this too, that those intergenerational relationships are important. So, finding somebody who's younger that your child can also pour into and be poured into, but also someone maybe older who has more life experience to share and stuff as well. The other area I wanted to talk a little bit about is the values in terms of for me, this is more applicable to boys. It would be more about like masculine values and the idea of toxic masculinity. I know we don't have a lot of time to unpack that.
Go ahead.
But,
go ahead, man.
Just this idea of the concepts of wisdom, self-control, courage, justice, purpose, faith, legacy. Really, I'm taking time to unpack those with your, in my case, my boys. Just, like, these are, here's what the world values, but as Christians and true masculinity, these are some of the things that you need to look at and value and think about. Yeah,
kind of defining it the healthy way instead of just letting the world define that for you. Yeah.
And then, looking at family values too, something we did, and I would encourage all your viewers to think about, what are your family values? So if you've got, if they're values for a man or a woman, what are your family values? So the Smith family, we took some time to really dive into what we felt like our family valued. So things like service, integrity, kindness, gratitude, and faithfulness. Those are the Smith family values.
That's awesome.
Jon talks a lot about leaving your legacy and passing down, and for my wife and I, for Carrie and my family, there really isn't much of a legacy that's been passed down to us, and we want to think about how our boys and their generations that follow them. What the Smith family is defined by, and what that legacy looks like. So, I would encourage that as well.
Let me share one thing on that personally. I think it's super cool, and I've heard you mention that before about you guys sitting down and really coming up with kind of your values as a family, the Smith family values. And I haven't taken it that far yet. And part of that is my own journey in this layer and level of intentionality, and part of it is. I've got a 4-year-old, a 6-year-old. I'm kind of like, so the other day, like last week, I had decided to pull the twins aside, like in a loving way. They were excited. There's more details. Like, it wasn't a forced, terrible thing. And we literally whiteboarded. I asked them 2 primary questions. I said, what are the Balches, what are they known for? Good and bad, or and then the more important thing that kind of led up to the more important thing, which was, what do we want to be known for?
Yeah.
What are we aiming at? And it was amazing. So it ended up being Jael, Ruth, and then Esther ended up. I didn't know she was going to be in there, but she ended up being there the whole time. And it sounds so formal, but like they soaked it up. I was just writing down their thoughts, and it's beautiful. I don't have time now to like talk about it, but like. It was amazing what they came up with. First of all, a lot more has stuck than maybe I thought that we've tried to teach them and instill and exemplify. And secondly, they really want to aim at that. They really want to attain that. They really want to strive for that. They really want to protect that legacy and build on that legacy. And but putting it down in writing and talking about it. So the next phase will be, a more full, all six of us type of thing, I think, to get to those core values. But I love that. Yeah.
Let me just add in too, and the beauty of that is that can then cascade into then defining what your personal values are. So I think it's worthwhile to spend some time to take inventory and come up with what you want your personal values to be too. So if you get that foundational kind of family values set, it should cascade, I think, down into what your personal values would be as well.
Absolutely. I know that I've been on that journey personally. But to take my family, kind of flipped it, to take my family on that journey. So wherever you're at, both of those are really, really important. No matter which came first, the chicken or the egg.
Agreed.
I think it's like, it's like, man, I know exactly what my values are. I'm passionate about sharing the grace and truth of Jesus with any person that God gives me the opportunity. I want to communicate that, whether it's verbally, written, whatever it is. Like, I just want to model that, show that, teach that. And I know that drives me in all areas of my life, but what does that mean for our family? What is that, what are my, my wife's, what are my kids, like personalized, like what are those as they get older, helping them, discern how God's made them uniquely and how that ministry for them plays out. It's not just cool. It's really energizing once you get that kind of clarity on I know what we're aiming at. I know who I am. I know what we're about. I know, and you start running things through that filter. It's really helpful in different situations of life that can pop up. Anything else, Darin, that you've had on your mind, your thoughts, that coming into this conversation?
One of the last things I would mention is just the reminders to explicitly tell your children certain things. So you may think that your children, know these things, but to actually tell them, I try to, and not in a way where it's like, you say that all the time, but in a meaningful way to tell my children, I love you. I appreciate you.
Right.
You can do it. I believe in you. Yeah. I love how you care about others. I'm proud of you and who you are. Being your dad is my favorite job in the world. Yeah. You're enough just as you are. Yeah. On and on. You're fun to be around. You're excellent at, fill in the blank. Yeah. And just being very intentional about giving your children these constant reminders and letting them know how you feel about them and care about them.
Yeah, that is so important. I know, there are aspects, my parents modeled that really well for me. And I know one of the big phrases I've used, especially, I still use it, but especially as my kids were younger or at their younger phases were, I'll never stop loving you. I'll always love you. Even if you don't decide to follow Jesus, which they know is my top prayer for them. So they know that, but even if you don't, I'll still love you. You cannot stop my love. For them to feel so secure in things like that, and speaking repetitiously and consistently those true affirmations in their life, over their life, those blessings, what a firm foundation internally they have to then take on the risks and the adventures and the hardships of life that just are part of life. They feel like they're secure, and part of that is how God thinks about them, and reiterating those truths of God's love and truth over them, and embedding those so deeply. It is so powerful. It really is. Thanks for sharing that, Darin.
For sure.
When we think about we fast forward, like Jon said, 20 years from now or 30 years from now, okay? Just to guarantee that no matter what your age of your kid is, they're an adult. What is the greatest gift that we could have given our children in their first 18 to 22 years of life? It's the greatest gift. And there's a lot of ways to word it, so I'm not going to nitpick it. But Darin, how would you answer that question? What's the greatest gift of all the things that they might experience? What's the greatest thing that we could have imparted or given them?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's a relationship with Jesus, with God. I want them to know Jesus. I want them to have a relationship. I want them to love God. I want them to love Jesus, and then secondly, love their neighbors as well. So.
I couldn't have said it better, man. It's the gift that keeps on giving. Yeah. Just if you give them Jesus, like, again, take them on vacation, do fun things, like in all the intentional ways, but like, and use those things even as a part of showing God's goodness. But at the end of the day, your mission, parents, your mission, fathers, is to be a follower of Jesus who passes on the legacy of faith in a way that you pray your children will raise the bar from what you even said. That I pray that my children build on a legacy and an example of faith for their children that far exceeds anything I could have even done. But it's my job to help, continue to build that in their lives and pass on the faith that, so, if you're a father listening and you're not really like serious about your faith, or you haven't really grabbed onto that in a real personal way, maybe you haven't committed your life to Jesus, or reach out, betterequippedwithcody@gmail.com. I'd love to connect, to talk with you, or even if you want to reach out to Darin, email me, I'll pass it on. And
please do.
It's just, there's nothing more important in this whole topic of intentional father. Everything else is like an overflow of how you're trying to live intentionally with Jesus to pass on Jesus to your kids. So Darin, thank you so much for joining me on this. And I know we just grazed a massive topic, but I know that this is going to be helpful for people and help them to be better equipped with as a father, as a mother, as a follower of Jesus. I know that. And so, Darin, happy Father's Day to you, man.
Thank you. Happy Father's Day to you as well.
Thank you so much. And I look up to you and your family as well. And I'm so honored that you're able to join us. So again, reach out if you have any questions, and hopefully you'll join us soon for one of our future conversations. We'll see you later, guys.
Great. Thank you. Bye.